Welcome to the Arise and Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Connie Jones, and this is a space where we're going to arise into who we truly are, releasing the struggle and the striving and the surviving, learning how to thrive in the life that God created us to live. And we're going to talk about healing, identity, purpose, and courageous leadership through the lens of counseling wisdom, coaching insight, practical tools, leadership principles, and biblical truth. So whether you're listening to a solo episode or a powerful conversation with another purpose-driven leader, my hope is that you feel encouraged and grounded and empowered to live and lead freely, authentically, and aligned with who you were created to be. Let's go. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Arise and Thrive podcast. And just want to say welcome back to Kelsey Newcome. We have her joining us today again. I'll say more about that in just a second, but welcome, Kelsey.
Hey, welcome. Not me, welcome. You guys, welcome.
Yeah, welcome to our fun today, right? Yeah, our discussion. We are going to have fun today. It's going to be a really good discussion that I think people are really going to be interested in because it is a hot topic. I'll introduce you this way since we've started in is that Kelsey is obviously one of the therapists on our team. She's a very gifted clinician, and we are happy to just love having her on our team. But one of among your specialties, which I'll let you list in just a second, is working with couples with sex and intimacy struggles. And and we're going to dive into that today and spill all the goods on that. So, but I'll let you just kind of share the other specialties that you have, and then we'll dive into the topic.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi, I am Kelsey Newcome. So, like Connie mentioned, one of my specialties is couples and specifically looking at intimacy, and we'll talk about what that even means. But I also see a lot of teenagers with like suicidal ideation, self-harm, just like struggles within school with peers. I see, like we call them like anxiety disorders. So that would be like OCD, social phobia, um, generalized anxiety disorder, that type of thing. And then I also see clients who struggle with eating disorders. So that kind of encompasses a lot of things, whether that be I need to sit down and do meal support with you. We need to talk about maybe some body image happening. And so those are my main people that I see.
Yeah, and you do such a great job with them, and your people always love you. So thank you for just being you and doing the work that you do in the world. It's amazing and so needed. And we'll talk about how if someone's interested in connecting with you, how they can do that towards the end of the episode. But well, let's dive in and get started on this on intimacy, because it's such a and intimacy and sex are typically thrown in the same sentence, or in the same same sentence, but they're not always the same. Intimacy is not just physical, and so maybe that's a good place to start. I want you to just kind of like help us understand what is intimacy, and are there like what is it if it's not just sex, and if it's sex too. So like help us understand all that.
Right. Yep. I mean, I always see couples, or I even see women who just come in specifically to work on intimacy, and they're like, I get them at the point where they're like, we haven't had sex in insert the number of months, right? And so I'm like, okay. And they think that that's like the thing that needs to be like worked on. But really, there's tons of other different types of intimacy, right? And so the biggest one, and I see clinically how this goes. So like clinically, people will have like a high social intimacy. So social intimacy means like you go out with your partner, you guys are hanging out with your friends, you're going to trivia, maybe you're just going just you two to see a movie.
Right.
Moderate, like intellectual intimacy, which means you have conversations, whether that be parenting conversations or like, oh, how's work going? Or what are your future goals? Like that would be the intellectual intimacy. And then we get into like the lower. So, like low emotional intimacy. What are those things that I'm doing that's bothering you that maybe we need to work on? What are the things that you're doing that's bothering me that I want you to work on? These are where like the hard conversations start
Yeah.
happening because social intimacy, that's fun. That's low vulnerability. That's not something that you really have to like sit down and open up to your partner and maybe cause some waves.
Right.
Then there's usually conflict around sexual intimacy if you're coming to see me that's and all of those other boxes aren't being checked. I can pretty much guarantee that the sexual piece of it isn't going to be there or be where it used to be or be where you want it to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those there's other areas, right? Like there's spiritual intimacy. How do you engage spiritually with your partner? There's physical, non sexual intimacy, hand holding, kissing, hugging, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I see all those different pieces like align together typically.
Thanks for that explanation. And it sounds like that when one or even more than one different levels of intimacy aren't there, then of course the sexual piece or the physical piece is not going to be there.
Right.
Typically, especially for women, because
Yep.
women and men too have to feel safe in emotional intimacy and
Mm,
need some kind of either social, intellectual, spiritual, emotional intimacy connection in order to be able to have sex.
right. Right. And I would even argue, I even sometimes argue that like in order for a man to give a woman the emotional, spiritual, like all the things that like categorically like women need, they need that safety and like to be able to even give that to them. So
Yes.
people often say like, "Oh, well the man can just whatever whenever." And I'm like, "What? Actually, in order to be supportive of the woman, like they also need that safety."
Yes. 100%. And so, how do you, and this is a big question, but how do you help couples, um, men and women, and I know it's different for, how what men and women need, but how do you help couples who don't have emotional safety, um, in their relationship begin to heal and get that emotional safety so that they can have true intimacy
Sure.
on a
Yeah.
lot of levels.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go back one step
Yeah.
because one really important thing that is often overlooked is self intimacy. So, in order to have intimacy with anybody else, you have to have it with yourself first. And that's
Yeah.
a lot of times missed when we go through like all the different types of intimacy. Like, we forget about like that's your own like body awareness, like regulation, right? If
Yeah.
you're coming home anxious every day out of 10, there's no way you're going to be able to give any pieces of you to your partner.
Yep.
Like self-compassion, personal boundaries, like all of those things that are encompassed in that self. So I like to look at that. Like, what are you doing for yourself? How do you show up at your house at the end of the day after work? Are you yelling at everyone? Are you going into the room and closing the door so there's no way to have any of that those other pieces of intimacy? So the first thing that I like to do is look at the self.
Such
Obviously,
an
people are
important.
coming for couples, but I also see individuals, right? And so stabilizing your nervous system first,
Yep.
that reduces fighting, escalation in any sort of way. The laundry basket with the sock right outside of it, that doesn't become as irritating. Like all of those things is so first is self because we are individually human,
Yep.
even though we're in a couple. Um, and then I like to look at like what is your cycle? Like what is your relationship cycle? Does the husband pursue and the wife is like, no way? Does the wife criticized the sock on the floor. And so the husband's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, what is your guys' cycle that's keeping you guys stuck?
Yeah.
Well, those are usually the first two steps. And like, as you said, it's like way bigger than that. And it depends on like the couple that comes in to see me. But I always start with self and I always start with cycle because there's no way to move past if you don't break that cycle.
That is so important. Wow. We don't even like stop to think about that. We just want to move right into like, fix this, like, let's get this. But like, we can't fix it with someone else until we fix it with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Starts right here.
Right. And so then I'll often be like, do you guys have individual therapists? And they'll often say, no, we don't. We just thought we were going to come here. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to work on self. Like, how do you work on self outside of being in a couple?
That's right. Yes. That self-awareness piece isn't huge. And so when you get, and I know that takes time, that's a process within itself, but as you work through that with people, and then so they understand themselves, they understand their patterns, and then they
Yep.
understand the couple cycle, and how they interact with each other, then what are some things how do you begin to help them, um, create deeper, better, more healthier connection, and then more intimacy, on all the different levels.
Yep. So I like communicate. I know everyone always says like communication is key, but it really is, right? So like the way that I communicate to my husband is not the same way that he's going to communicate to me. And so sometimes the way that a wife communicates to her husband, the husband doesn't receive that in the intended way. So after that, I like to work on well, it all kind of is working together. So I send everyone home, like, you have to check in with your partner for 15 minutes, and I'm going to give you the questions, and they're going to be uncomfortable
Yeah.
because, like, that's the process of therapy, unfortunately.
You
It's
have
not
to
really,
lean into
yeah,
the vulnerable, uncomfortable things that you're not willing to do because it's scary, of course.
right. Right. And like, you don't know what your partner's going to say, and you don't know what that outcome is going to be. But that unknown is what keeps that cycle going because that means there's no real trust there. And so if I can't say, hey, when you kind of like talk to me like that, that hurt my feelings and made me feel like unloved, right? Because that's what it is. It's not like, oh, why'd you talk to me like that? There's like a feeling behind that, which is like left out, unloved, not cared about, whatever that might be. And so most people aren't even having 15 minutes of communication about important things. Like we talk about the kids and who's going to pick them up from sports and what you're doing today. Like,
Transactional.
right. But we're
Great,
not saying,
great co-parents, or not, maybe sometimes not even that, but great,
yeah,
great partners in some ways, but not true intimate partners.
right. Right. And so you're maybe not even having that conversation 15 minutes a week. And so we're going to do that every single night until it becomes more comfortable, more trust is being built. We're going to ask questions that matter. We're going to try to get past those primary emotions, which are the freaking out over the sock thing, right? Because it's really not that. It's really like maybe you feel disrespected because, like, my job is the laundry in the house, but you just are throwing it all over.
Yep.
So, having those conversations and moving past those like primary emotions is definitely key because if you can't do that, we can't build that like non sexual intimacy. Because we're not going to tell each other those things. We're afraid to address that because we're afraid of their reaction, or we're afraid to address that because maybe our communication isn't where it needs to be. And like we need to set better intentional like ways that we speak to each other.
Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, because it's so interesting that when we're trying to build something beautiful, but we're somehow tearing ourselves and each other down, that's destructive. And
Yeah.
we can't build that. There's no connection in that. There's just survival in
Right.
that.
Oh,
And oftentimes it feels like a battlefield, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that is, like I said, it's more painful and destructive. And relationships aren't made to be painful and destructive. They are meant to, or that we have to survive them. We're meant to thrive in them.
right,
And so it's amazing that you help people get back what is lost. And they're doing the best. We're all doing the best we can
right,
in it.
right,
But sometimes our greatest effort is, when we're in our, feeling like we're surviving in some areas of our lives, and then we're trying to share that with someone else, and we're trying to raise other humans, and we're, pouring out in places, in all kinds of places, and it's just too much to try to change on our own.
right.
Um, why can't like what do you see when you're working with couples and men and women, and like where do you see that they have the biggest disconnects and the biggest misunderstandings that are causing them to be so separate? Because we're made for connection, we're made for intimacy. Like, why do we get it? Like, why do we struggle so much?
I think one thing that you said about like sometimes we're just like in survival mode. I think in life, you're in seasons, right? Like you are in survival mode sometimes. Like I remember when we had our first kid and we were like in the trenches and we just like crossed paths in the daytime but you can't stay there. And so I think people stay there and then they don't know how to get back out,
Yeah,
right? So you have multiple children and so you've been there multiple years or you've had multiple big life things happen so you've stayed in survival for multiple years and then that becomes your normal.
yeah,
And how do you get out of your normal if you don't know any different? And
yeah,
so that's like why bringing a third party person into it is so important because we can see like the bigger picture and what's going on where you're just like living it every day, like you said, surviving.
yeah,
And so new coping skills are being brought into the relationship, maybe that weren't there before. And they're probably not so good because normally if you're surviving, they're not. They're just like whatever can get us to the next day.
yeah,
And so I see a lot of that, like people just living in survival and then being like, well, everything else is messed up too. And I'm like, okay, but it's not. Remember, because you guys got married for a reason and you guys are together for a reason. And so, like, let's think back to like where we were at then. Like,
yeah,
remember before survival mode? Like, what did that look like?
yeah,
We can bring that back. Even if we have kids, even if we moved, even if we have a different job, like all of that stuff can still come back.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you bring up another point that, like, helping people get in different seasons when so much has happened and so much has changed, either remembering their why or finding a new why,
Yeah.
like finding a place to kind of build a foundation on anew.
Yeah, right. Like new season, new stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so we do have to adapt and change. And that's another thing that I see is like
Yeah.
they're like, well, why can't we go back to like this? And I'm like, well, because like you have 3 kids now, we have to work around, or you commute to the city every day. And so that cuts back on your time at home or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's talk. Let's for the a few minutes here. Let's dive into, because we've talked about intimacy and how you help people get that back. And well, is there anything else you want to say about other types of intimacy that you feel like we didn't cover? I mean, I know there's so much that we could go on and on and on for days about it. But is there anything else important that you feel like you didn't get to share about intimacy before we move on to the sex part?
Oh, nope. That was my next one. Yep. Okay. Yep. That part.
Yes, yes. All right. So it is a part of intimacy. It's an important part of intimacy, but not
Mhm.
all of intimacy. And we distinguish that. But when couples are struggling with sex, yes, we have to address the other intimacy issues that are affecting physical intimacy. And that's always there. However, there is the physical intimacy part. There is the sex part. And there's so much there that, and so many variables there that people are dealing with and struggling with that are real.
Yeah.
And so speak to that for just a minute. Like, what do you help people with or what are you seeing as the struggles with the physical side of the intimacy?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So sometimes there's trauma, right? And that puts up a
yeah,
wall. So that's where, like, I would have you go get an individual therapist so we can kind of break down some of that. There's also just like life change stuff that happens, perimenopause, menopause. I mean, we work with um, pelvic floor doctors in case there's pain. So there's a lot of barriers that are very real that can like limit the actual like sex part of the intimacy.
postpartum. Yeah, I
Postpartum.
mean,
Yeah, like all of the things. And like we at Arise have been having other providers come in to partner with us because this is such an important part of getting people to where they want in their relationship physically. Because like low libido, we might need to look at your hormones. If you're having pain, we might need to send you to like pelvic floor. There's so many pieces that we don't want to discredit because a lot of women do get discredited and they're saying just like, oh, just like do it. And like, I'm not going to do something that's painful. Like,
painful.
it's supposed to be a connection. That's not connecting. That's being like, ugh, I have to do this even though it hurts. And
Right.
that adds another layer of resentment in relationships that
Sure.
trying to get rid of those, not add on to them. So the
Absolutely.
first thing I like to do is like, if any of that's happening, like we need to go get that looked at
Yeah.
because it can be an easy fix, like with just some hormone replacement or just some pelvic floor, and then that goes away.
Right.
And now we can start working on the other things. I
Mhm.
also,
And then men with low T
yep,
or just trauma or
mhm,
feeling
mhm,
inadequate in some way affects performance
yep.
and all
And
of that.
I think people don't realize that like men go to pelvic floor too, right? Like if they
Yeah.
have erectile dysfunction, if they have early ejaculation, like any of
Yeah.
those kind of things that do cause some embarrassment sometimes or
Sure.
like shame, like there's somewhere for you too to like go and have those kind of things looked at.
Yeah.
So yes, both sides of the coin can have things that we can are like medically we need to go look at.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like my piece of it, um I mean, there's like desire discrepancies. So I go through like, is there any trauma? Is there any shame tied to this? Is there desire discrepancies? Is how
And
you're in
just for people who don't know, I know what you're saying when you said that desire discrepancies, meaning
Oh,
what?
yeah. Meaning like wife wants to have sex 5 times a week and husband's like, oh, I really only like need to twice. So if that's happening and like someone's expecting 5 and someone's expecting twice, we're obviously not aligned on that.
Right.
And so whatever that median middle ground is for the couple, we need to find that.
Yep.
Um, and then maybe like how you're initiating, when you're initiating, that kind of stuff matters too.
Sure.
How, like, if you even have any desire at all, and if it's a no, why?
Right.
Um, impacts on your nervous system. So I talked about coming home at a 10 out of 10 and you're anxious.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to let anyone be vulnerable with you
Yeah.
because,
You don't feel safe.
right, you're already not safe in your own self
Right.
on bringing another human into it, even though it's your husband, person you're with, doesn't matter.
Yep.
And I think that piece is really important too, because that can cause some the other side, like the other partner who's not experiencing that anxiety can get like, what's wrong with me? Like, why don't you want to be with me? Even though it really has nothing to do with that person.
Yep.
And like the other person might say, like, it really has nothing to do with you, but that's vulnerable. So that's hard to believe, or that's hard, especially if you're working through other issues. So I tell people, like, when we actually get to the sex, like, you will have done so much work to even get there, and
Yeah.
people don't realize that because they just want you to, like, fix it and, like, then it be on your calendar 3 times a week or whatever you've decided as a couple, and it really takes when you get to that point, it really takes so many steps to bring you back.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's not
absolutely.
it can be done, though. And I think when people see all the steps, they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so much work. And it is, but it can be done.
Yeah. And it's so much, at least you're doing something to move towards what you want rather than just staying stuck. And the energy that takes from you is like unmatched. When
Yes.
you're doing things to move forward, that's a beautiful thing. And then there's how I feel about myself and how I feel like my body looks and how do I want to be touched and do I like myself and, and then there's all the distractions and the avoidances and then add, alcohol and other dopamine, food and
Yep.
all that into the mix. And then we can really get off the rails.
Right.
And disconnect from ourselves and from our partner that we love more than anything. Or that we want to be in connection with, and it goes awry very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know we have to close for today, but anything that you, again, feel like you haven't gotten to share, that this is just such a big topic and you've given so much good information. And I think the message that there's hope and it can change and it doesn't have to stay this way and you're not doing something, there's not something wrong with you.
Yeah.
All of those things we want people to know. But like, is there anything else that you want to leave people with before we close today?
I just think it's important to know that intimacy only grows when both partners feel safe, both partners feel prioritized, understood, and not shamed. That's just like overall like safety net that we have to create in order to move forward in any sort of way. And all
That's
of those
beautiful.
things, I'm sure, have been in your relationship at some point. We just have to bring them back.
That's it. Oh, I love that. I love the way you said that. And it just feels so doable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is. And you shouldn't have to do it alone. And you
Right.
don't have to be ashamed that there's struggle there because it's normal.
And that you have to seek help because most people do.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Even the helpers. We have had to seek help about these things ourselves. So
Exactly.
yeah, there's no shame in this. Why we love helping others because we understand it.
And we know that there's something on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't do it if I was like, oh, they're just going to come in here and nothing's ever going to change. I would not do that. And so
That's
I
right.
know that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. And what a gift to be able to, it's so rewarding for us to be able to walk that out with people.
It is.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us again. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they get in touch with you?
You can go onto our website at Arise Counseling and Coaching and just click on my name and it will take you right to my booking site. You can also just do a 10-minute consultation if you have specific questions for your specific situation. I would be happy to answer and make sure we're a good fit.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for being you, for the work that you do, and for all the insight that you shared with us today. And the hope.
Yes, and the hope.
And the hope. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. If this like inspired something in you or spoke to something in you that you just like, and you know that you need to take that step, reach out to us. We would love to walk out this journey with you. And if you feel like there's something in here that someone else needs to hear, please share the episode. And we will see you right back here next time on the podcast. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending time with me on the Arise and Thrive podcast. If something in today's episode stirred your heart or brought clarity or invited growth, I encourage you to just pause and notice what's being awakened within you. You don't have to strive your way into transformation. Powerful change happens as you align with truth and you step forward with courage, one intentional choice at a time. And if this episode supported you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs this message. And until next time, remember, you were created for freedom, fullness, and purpose. It's time to arise and thrive.